Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watch One, and thanks for logging on. Today we are looking at the undisputed star of Omega's 2014 Baselworld display. The Omega Speedmaster Grey Side moon, also known as the Lunar Dust, combines the original ceramic case of the famed 2013 Dark Side smash hit, but it takes this watch to a place the Dark Side never went, the Grey Side, featuring a plasma-coated plasma-oxidized ceramic case, alternately metallic polished and metallic grained, with a matching tachometer scale and a platinum 950 dial. This watch has a completely different look, feel, and character than the Dark Side. It's also, in my experience within the industry, far less common than the Dark Side, so there's an exclusivity factor here that's quite a draw. As an exotic, this watch is not something you see every day, even in the Omega boutiques. But on my wrist, you can see this is an everyday watch for almost any wrist size. Now the case is 44.25 millimeters in diameter. My wrist is 6 1/3 inches, 16 centimeters in circumference, and yet I can tell you that from an ergonomic perspective, the watch sits very lightly on the wrist. Ceramic is somewhere between titanium and steel in terms of its mass, so even though the traditional Speedmaster Professional Moonwatch is a 42 and this is over 44, this feels lighter on the wrist. This is a more delicate companion, at least in terms of wrist impression, than the Speedy Pro, and I really like that because a big watch that's wieldy is kind of the best of both worlds. You also can see just how short the lugs are. Now they curve nicely and taper nicely at their periphery, but they don't extend that far beyond the case, so while it is a large 44 plus, it isn't as large as it could be if these lugs projected as far beyond the case as, for instance, those of the original Moonwatch do. So Omega pared down the lugs even as it scaled up the case. The strap, featuring a complementary gray alligator, is exceptionally durable, and not just because the gator is on top and a soft, supple black calfskin is on the bottom, but because Omega uses this unique stitched-in polymer insert. Now what it does is it allows this unique ceramic pin buckle, which has a very large pin, I'm going to add, to securely anchor the bottom of the strap, but without gouging, deforming, or damaging the pinholes as you so often see on a conventional strap. So Omega really brought longevity into the equation with this watch. The attention to detail is superb. So not only do you have a buckle and a case and a ceramic tachometer bezel that are going to age well, virtually scratch-proof, they're just as durable as the sapphire crystal, but the thought is even paid to items as banal as the strap and the strap holes. That's the degree of attention to detail at play here. You want to talk more attention to detail? Notice the subtle contrast of this platinum-colored stitching, and then on the bottom, yet another contrast, red on black. Beautiful details like this really make the watch, especially when you consider the inked red printing on the rotor and how it's complementary, as well as the printing on, I should mention, the bridges, but how it's complementary to the contrasting stitch on the underside of the strap. This is a beautifully thought, beautifully realized, complete work. Everything about this is coherent, cohesive, and thematically relevant to everything else. And I want to talk a little bit about how the style of the case itself is cohesive. Now it takes the familiar beveled lug of the traditional Speedmaster Professional Moonwatch. Really, since the 10512 model first introduced the beveled lug, you've had this essential look since the mid-60s, but it's scaled up to 44.25, and then it blends seamlessly into a tachometer scale that features a unique distinction compared to previous Omega Speedmaster Professionals. Aside from the gray side of the moon and the dark side of the moon, the combination of a ceramic tachometer with fully loomed calibrations, and I mean everything, hash marks, dots, letter printing, as well as numerals, glows at night, and it's quite a sight. Really something to see. It's nice to know that as good as this looks, it'll stay that way, and it looks just as dramatic at night when it all lights up. So you can use both the tachometer as well as all the functions of the dial at night. And Omega adds a corresponding insert of lume in the crown. Why? Just cause. Because it's beautiful, because it's thoughtful, because it's playful, and this is a luxury product after all. Now all of the indices on the dial are gray oxidized and mirror polished, so the contrast during the day is very high. Glows like a torch at night. It's when you get it into direct sunlight that it really comes alive, because the platinum dial itself has sort of a grained eggshell texture to it, and when light catches it, it starts to do things that a conventional sunburst metallic or straight-grained metallic or even a lacquer can't accomplish. The way the individual grains of the dial catch and scatter the light is beautiful, pretty much unique to each individual example of the Grey Side, and gives this watch a look unlike anything else in the Speedmaster catalog, and really unlike anything else on the market. Now, the watch does feature a 3-register chronograph, but cleverly hidden in the form of a twin register dial. Now, the twin register dial is nice because it leaves a lot of open space, keeps the dial uncluttered. It's got a little bit of a vintage look to it, and it's also symmetrical, so very pleasing aesthetically. But you can see at 3 o'clock there is what's known as a mono counter that ticks off your 12 hours and 60 minutes, so you can track chronograph seconds, hours, and minutes. Because the caliber 9300 in this watch uses a vertical clutch, you can run the chronograph continuously if you want to. If you prefer to have that constant center seconds, instead of relying on the constant seconds subdial at 9 o'clock, you can run it continuously because of the vertical clutch. It will not wear out a gear train. That's one of the advantages of a vertical clutch mechanism. But this watch has a lot of technical advantages to recommend it. This is the Omega exclusive coaxial caliber 9300, twin barrels operating in series, very consistent torque release over the 60-hour power reserve. It is a COSC rated Swiss chronometer, so you've got that going for it, but Omega goes so much farther than simple chronometer specs. A smooth vertical clutch and that traditional crisp column wheel actuator that you can see right next to my thumb. Omega doesn't just look to the past and the great traditions of mechanical watchmaking, but the future. And on this free-sprung, dual-anchored true balance bridge, you can see the Omega SI-14 silicon hairspring and silicon balance wheel. Anti-magnetic if you do happen to have high-powered electronics in your home, in your office, if you're often around subwoofers, if you're a doctor working in an office that has very high-powered magnetic equipment, this is the chronograph you want on your wrist because it can shake off those insults and injuries of the modern lifestyle. It also has a lot of features that set it apart, even from an artistic standpoint. It is state-of-the-art, but it doesn't look askance to traditional arts. Omega has an interesting take on the oxidized screw. Conventionally, you see those are oxidized blue on most high-end movements. Here they're oxidized black, and that's one of the hallmarks of the Omega 8500 and 9300 coaxial in-house movement family. Another interesting tradition that Omega's pioneered with this family of movements, and you can see it to best effect here, is that they use a sort of spiral arabesque rather than having a traditional linear Côte de Genève or a sunburst Côte de Genève, Côte de Soleil it's sometimes called. They're curved almost like the shell of a nautilus, so they have a splayed out arabesque twist to them that is both beautiful and unique. Compared to the decoration on contemporary Breitling or Rolex movements, when we're talking about the Swiss big three of sports watches, those are generally the comparables. This one is by far the most distinctive. So Omega not only has a robust and original technology at play here, they have traditional watchmaking in the form of the column wheel and that smooth vertical clutch, and then they have a sort of progressive, modern aesthetic paired with the future of watchmaking in the silicon escapement and hairspring. And I should mention that being a dual-anchored full balance bridge with a free-sprung escapement, this is a doubly shock-resistant and thermally resistant as well as anti-magnetic movement here. There's a lot of durability engineered into this watch, and the plasma oxidized ceramic case, the buckle, the pushers, and the tachometer scale are just the beginning of that equation. Mechanically robust, physically robust, artistically beautiful, and holistic. A vision that's really been realized in every stitch, from the plasma threads themselves, or the platinum colored threads themselves, to the gray alligator strap, to the beautiful twin contrasting finished, brushed and polished plasma treated ceramic case, the circular grained tachometer scale, that eggshell granular platinum dial, the gray oxidized and polished indices and hands, as well as the corresponding pin buckle. This Omega Speedmaster Grey Side of the Moon, also known as the Lunar Dust, really has everything going on. Although over 44 millimeters, it is an ergonomic triumph, and it got along quite well with my wrist. I think you could wear it comfortably on a wrist down to less than 6 inches or 15 centimeters in circumference. To get a better sense of this Grey Side of the Moon, definitely check it out on our website, Watch You Want.